4 very brief points. If the vaccine is not developed in the EU, I would like to know how will the agency ensure that the tests carried out meet European safety regulations without postponing access to the treatment? And is the agency coordinating with other international agencies or national authorities? And will there be an ongoing surveillance once the vaccine is in the market? Then will there be exclusivity clauses for certain providers? And lastly, based on data from already commercialized drugs, I'd like to know if you're going to centralize all data so that we can reach final conclusions on the use of these medicines. Thank you.
Thank you. For Renew, Nicolas Stefanota. No, he's not here. So, Chrysoula. Yeah. Please go ahead. Vas-y, Chrysoula. No, you are mute.
Je sais pas qu'est-ce qui se passe.
C'est bon, tu peux y aller. Ah.
Et une fois que le vaccin sera
once we have discovered vaccine, there's the problem of production. That's going to be a more difficult issue. And the production and approval of production sites takes years. So we'll have to make sure that we make best use of existing capacity, and other vaccines may become less priority. For pediatric use, for instance, how do you think that Europe and member states can optimize the use of vaccine production capacity? Thank you.
ID, Silvia Saldone. No, you're okay. She's not there. So for ID, Madame Griset.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Director, for your time. I have a few brief questions. What about the studies on the use of blood plasma, and what about hydrochloroquine and remdesivir? But when we don't have final conclusions on the protocols for effectiveness for these drugs. And so I just wanted to ask the following question. Do you think that the health emergency can reduce in relaxing of some of the rules for testing and approval? And do you think that your agency should be a regulatory agency for medicines in the EU?
The first one on the list.
Good morning. I hope it's my turn because I didn't hear anything, but however...
It's okay, we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for being with us. I would like to know, as I have scrutinized your publication from last week, I think it was about fast-tracking procedures, and I was a bit worried that independent researchers may not have access to the raw data in order to look if every risk has been properly addressed. We should learn from the swine flu vaccine, which was not properly scrutinized before it was brought into public. And the second question was, will there be an assessment of the chance of a vaccine being produced in many places of the earth? Because, as we know, the dead vaccines, which are pretty pretty much used worldwide. There are a lot of production sites, so a vaccine working with this technology could be very easily transferred to more places than, for example, a vaccine working with mRNA. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Kosimska for ECR.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you very much, Chair. On the 4th of May, the European Medicines Agency informed us about the fast-track support procedure in terms of authorization of treatment and vaccines on the coronavirus. I have studied them closely. It is about clinical trials. It is about fast track for authorization on the market and on the larger scope of symptoms that could be treated. I'm wondering, what about compassionate use? This is particularly interesting because we have patients who can be critically ill and there is no other drug or treatment to be offered because most of them are still being tested. Until now, the EMA only published guidelines on one of those potentially compassionate use drugs. I'm wondering whether any more of them are in the pipeline because we are really in need of something that we could give our patients in critical condition. Thank you.
Thank you. Mick Wallace for the GUE.
Thanks very much, Chair. There's obviously, Professor, there's an awful lot of challenges attached to coming up with medicine and vaccines and the production of and the distribution, and it's all very challenging. But do you not think at this stage that we're very much at mercy of the pharmaceutical industry? And do you not think that this crisis has taught us that public health is actually too important to be left to an entity that is driven by profit, not service, and that really the public bodies have got to take control of health matters again? They've been moved away from public bodies a lot in the last few years, and we now find ourselves really at the mercy of the private sector. And there's no doubt, but in many areas of Europe, our public service has been undermined. Our public health service has been undermined, and even in relation to the medicines and the vaccines, do you not think that we should take it back into public ownership? Thanks.
And so we're gonna split your answering time, Mr. RASI. So I will take one more speaker, then you will have 10 minutes to answer the first questions. For the non-attached, Mr. Comyn. Put your mic on.
Sorry. Merci. Je disais merci au président.
Thank you. I was saying thank you to the chair as well for having organised this second question quickly.
Mr. RASI, we are currently rushing, and we're using all agencies, governments, companies, civil society, so that we can find a vaccine for the coronavirus as soon as possible. But investigations for SARS and MERS were stopped at phase 1, and now we know after the fact that had these investigations continued to phases 2 and 3, which would be clinical trials, now it would take us far less time to find the coronavirus vaccine because part of the work would already be done. So let's look at things. Had we finished SARS and MERS research, clinical research trials phases 2 and 3, then perhaps we could find a vaccine for coronavirus in 5 or 6 months, and not a year, as experts tell us. And we know that. So those vaccines were stuck in phase 1 because there was no commercial interest by companies, which is a legitimate concern. But then, as a public authority, here's my question: how do we guarantee that all the clinical trials that might be useful for future situations will not be stopped because of lack of funding? We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know. I'm almost done. We don't know what future viruses might arise, but it is our obligation to be ready. So can we identify what type of research could be useful for future health threats? And can we guarantee that even though such research might not have any kind of economic benefit in the short term, could we still fund them? Thank you.
So back to you, Mr. RASI.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for calling me back here. I just have to flag I had a problem at the half of the intervention of Mr. Lise. I was cut off by my internet, and so I don't know. Probably I missed one intervention, and I apologize for that. I tried to reply, and if this is missing, is because I had a little gap in my connection, a gap of, I estimated 3.5 minutes. Starting with Mr. Lise, thank you for the question. Well, about remdesivir, the legal status, we have not approved yet the remdesivir. We just gave a guidance about what is called the compassionate usage, which is a prerogative of member states. However, a general guidance for those countries who can use the compassionate use has been issued once and updated a little bit after the first news coming from the new trial run at the NIH in the United States and now under evaluation of FDA. So we think our compassionate use is more or less mirroring what the US have done with the emergency use. Now there is an ongoing rolling review in the EMA and to support the CHMP decision. And it might be that a conditional market authorization can be issued in the coming days, subject to the data that we submitted and how the expert will deem those data robust enough to issue what I expect could be the conditional approval. I don't see for other major other kind of approval at this stage. But it's not issued yet and might come very soon because, as I say, the rolling review is ongoing. And that's where I lost the connection. So I could hear you saying I have a second question, and then I got disconnected. When I've been reconnected, I heard this a question about the pipeline, the compassionate use that we have using for the remdesivir. Was an MEP, a lady, but I couldn't detect the name because this connection problem. And probably the question was about the pipeline that we have about new potential medicines. Also this ATF, this task force we have in place is daily contacted by potential new producer, new ideas, new projects. In the pipeline coming very fast, I don't see, but meanwhile we are talking, something might happen because we see update by the day. The only possible real faster coming can be the monoclonal antibodies, that, as you know, are a sort of middle ground between the natural immunity and the vaccine, and because it's using the same principle to block the virus by artificial, as I may call, by biotechnology-made antibodies. That is, to the best of my understanding, the fastest coming. And then I know that there is a lot of research building on some initial effect of remdesivir to mimic and the more we know the virus and the proteins, the component, the reaction, the more new drugs might become available. I don't see this coming in a very short term. Then I heard another question about assessment about vaccine to be produced in many parts of Europe. Of course, this is unfortunately when we grant, if we will be in a position to grant an authorization for usage of vaccines in Europe, we cannot at the same time grant that the availability will be there. What EMA is doing is working very in strict collaboration both with the other DGs, DG Research, the Secretariat, of course DG Santé for prevalently, to see if any joint procurement, any new tools can be made available for the availability in Europe. I think one key element that this probably will answer even other questions, our key element will be to have a model who to vaccine first, since it's clear that no matter if we produce in Europe, no matter if we are, as has been said, at the complete mercy of the other of the pharmaceutical companies, no matter if we want to revert to a more European production, a more coordinated and maybe a central control of many aspects of the health. Whatever will come, there will never be a production enabling for worldwide availability of vaccine doses. Therefore, we need to have at least one holistic modeling that all the European country and maybe beyond Europe will use the same approach to go in waves of identifying the populations that are most likely to benefit and vaccinating them. We create the first ring of defense for the general population. So wave of this with a very sound model, and everybody has to follow the same model. So in this rational approach, with the lowest number of those, we will achieve the highest protection in a larger population. That's, I think, we had the advantage to have some months to be prepared for that, no matter what the availability will be. And of course, in the time, we have to think longer term in the future, how to make that available. I know this is much beyond our remit, but of course, we are very concerned, and whatever we can be contribute and help and flag, we will be not only available to do, but passionate of trying to be of any help. I heard another question, Mr. Comin, I think, said about the SARS and MERS vaccine. Yes, that was an important experience. Certainly, we have learned some lesson. We might have something streamlined by that. We can also, but also that experience is of some concern because we understood that with that kind of vaccine we had problem in terms of safety if given in people with an early stage of disease could have been worsening the disease. So that is a call for additional more consciousness. To check these, EMA is trying to set up a platform for immediate monitoring of both safety and efficacy of vaccine when will be distributed in a larger scale. And what we really would like to do, and we are already in touch with many parts of the Commission, DG Research, DG Digit, and other concerned part of the institution, to have to establish a permanent platform for such monitoring, as I said, of both safety and efficacy in the vaccine. I probably missed a lot of things, but I'm very happy to take back an apology, because this disruption in the internet disrupted a little bit my possibility to follow more efficiently the question. Over and ready, of course, to complement what I missed.
Okay, thank you. So I will give the floor to the remaining speakers, and if the first one want to draft their questions on the chat so that we could transfer them to you if you missed them, would be great as well. So let's start, and maybe the new question